There's a lot of Japan in the United States, certainly quite a bit of it here in San Francisco. Lots of Japanese products, of course, too. But one Japanese export which has not been very successful here has been the Japanese computer. Why? What have been the problems? We'll find out the answers to these questions as we take a look at Japanese computers on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is brought to you in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Popular Computing, the magazine that gives readers an understanding of the technology and applications of microcomputers and software in office, home, and classroom.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stewart Cheifet, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, we've been hearing for years now about the Japanese threat. Any minute they're about to invade our shores, take over the PC market just like they did cars and VCRs and cameras and so on, but it hasn't happened yet. Has that window of opportunity passed, or is it still possible the Japanese could move in?
Well, first of all, we're talking about packaged personal computers because they've had many successes in other areas related to computing. But the Japanese have a very large market at home, and that's the home market they address first. In the U.S., it's primarily a conversion process in many cases. Here they're in the consumer business. They don't really have the distribution, marketing, and support channels for computers themselves. Now, the potential is certainly there, but the U.S. manufacturers are hoping to keep them offshore by the ingenuity that we have at home.
Today we're going to go to Japan to see the latest in Japanese technology in the personal computer field. We'll also see what's going on in some other foreign countries as they try to get aboard the computer bandwagon. We're going to begin, though, by taking a background look at what the Japanese effort has been thus far to get into that world market.
When the first Japanese transistor radio appeared in 1955, few people realized that it signaled the start of the Japanese economic miracle. From radios to stereos, from cars to cameras, the Japanese have marked one success after another in markets around the world. Japanese technical proficiency is renowned, and in fact the country's professional base seems geared toward high tech. On a per capita basis, Japan has 4 times as many engineers as the United States. But in spite of a dominant position in consumer electronics, the Japanese have not done so well with computers, at least those for export. Japanese computer companies own about 10% of the world market, while the U.S. has 80%. And in the United States, which accounts for over half of the global market, Japan holds only 2%. But the Japanese have excelled in producing components, hardware, and peripherals which don't require software development or extensive customer support. With some exceptions, they have been content to leave systems integration and service to domestic affiliates. Like the early years of Toyotas and Datsuns, however, the Japanese have learned since their first attempts, and their recent approach to home computer exports seems to be one of waiting and watching.
Japan is the world's second largest computer market. More than $24 billion worth of computers have been sold here. But of course, the world's largest computer market is the United States, more than 4 times the size of Japan's. So no matter how successful a Japanese computer manufacturer may be in the domestic market, the temptation is irresistible to want to sell Japanese computers in the United States.
まず見逃せないのはアメリカでほとんどのデファクトスタンダードになった IBM PC の存在が
I understand that in the United States, the IBM PC is a kind of de facto standard. Most Japanese computers are not based on this standard. Instead, Japanese computer makers are struggling to make special machines for export to the United States, which are not sold in Japan.
あくまでも輸出専用です。で、ソフトウェアのドキュメンテーションと
Japanese computer companies are faced with 2 major problems. First, poor documentation, and second, a weak user interface. These are 2 very serious problems. These problems must be resolved to make Japanese computers exportable.
The distinct difference between Japanese and American computer users has not been overlooked by the Japanese makers and can be seen in any Japanese computer store. A profusion of low-cost machines attracting some very young customers, and the accent is definitely on entertainment software.
Japanese market currently moving from the hobbyist market to the business-oriented market. In the U.S., almost all the personal computers already moved from the hobbyists to the business areas.
The IBM of Japan is the NEC Corporation, with a 58% share of the local PC market. But like most Japanese manufacturers, NEC has had disappointing sales in the United States and seems to be waiting for some major improvements, especially in the home computer field.
In Japan, we try to sell our personal computer to the home market. However, the current software and word processors functions is not sufficient for the home use, but gradually such a market will be increased until the next 5 or 10 years. But currently we do not have any big such a home market yet.
日本のマシンが売れる条件というのを考えています。For
Japanese computers to sell successfully in the US, they need first of all some unique new software, and that brings up the problem of finding good third-party developers. Next, Japanese makers need to find good retail outlets to sell their own software. Maybe the reason NEC and other Japanese companies are not pushing harder in the US is because they are not ready yet. They are saving their strength for the future. That's why I say this is a time for waiting.
Japanese industry has a firm tradition of introducing new products in the domestic market first. Only then, if Japanese consumers respond favorably, will the product go overseas. It has been a recipe for success so far, but the computer is a special case.
Transplanting Japanese-built software to American market, especially applications software, I think it's very hard. And there is no established technology about writing operating systems or communication software, not much in Japan. And I think I was wondering what is the reason why there is such a difficulty. And my conclusion is, it is impossible to ask Japanese to speak English, right? A computer is invented in United States. And it is impossible for Japanese people to, well, they can copy the inventions, but really inventions, there must be some sort of the fashion or style or history.
Of all the new Japanese computer products, the most closely watched is MSX. Aimed primarily at the home market, MSX is an operating system designed by Kei Nishi to solve the problem of incompatible machines. MSX is a standard for 8-bit machines, and no matter who manufactures the computer, if it runs on MSX, it will run any software written for MSX, an admirable concept with its share of problems.
I know
that in Tokyo, MSX machines are being sold at discount prices. In this case, it's not because the product is popular. It's just that MSX has not been very successful. Like inexpensive computers in the United States, it's a loser's game. Their business capabilities are very weak. For example, disk drives are lacking, memory storage is very limited, and screen resolution is poor, well below US standards.
The reason why I think MSX is going to have a very important significance among the industry is looking back the history of consumer products. All the consumer product success is multiple hardware vendor and multiple software vendor. There has been no consumer products that has established only with single source of the vendor. And the beauty of this product is we have a very clear separation of software and hardware.
MSX is a hybrid of Eastern and Western technology. Although made in Japan, it was designed in the United States. While MSX is still an unknown factor, it points to Japan's unconventional approach to a routine obstacle, compatibility.
In fact, if the Japanese made machines to the IBM standard, it would just lead to a kind of price war. It would not improve anything. Instead, the Japanese companies are trying to produce machines with higher standards, a higher level of functions. The bigger the gap between Japanese and American computers, the better the chances are for new Japanese machines.
Personal computers is a good, something like the culture-oriented good. So from Japan, it's very difficult to export our personal computers to the United market. In other words, IBM is very difficult to export IBM personal computer to Japan. So the cultural problems is very important.
Faced with a language obstacle, an uncertain market, and cutthroat competition, the Japanese are striking out in all directions to get the jump on new computer technology. The best place to see this is at the first Japanese Comdex, where the opening day's attendance was the highest ever recorded at this American-style computer show. The products on display ranged from the very clever to the very advanced, with a particular emphasis on Asian applications. Fujitsu's Chinese word processor attracted a lot of interest, as did the Thai language version. Before computers, there was no practical way to type the thousands of characters called kanji. To deal with the complexity of these symbol words, different systems have been adopted. This version recognizes the corners of a character chosen by the user from a keyboard. By doing away completely with the keyboard interface, CIC's Handwriter treats kanji as graphics. Its built-in dictionary recognizes thousands of characters entered by the user on a digitizing pad. Among the new portables, Fujitsu showed a 16-bit machine with a 25-line by 80-column screen. It comes with 128K of random access memory, expandable to 448K, and up to 512K of ROM. Prices are not set, but will begin around $1,300. The most unusual portable on view was probably the Ampere WS1. Its bizarre clamshell case hides a full-sized screen and a Motorola 68000 chip. The operating system is APL, a compact, powerful language developed in the early 60s for scientific applications.
APL, it's a learning APL language, very powerful language. Also, we developed the new original operation systems called Big DOS. It is a multitasking, multi-user operation system, completely unique for a lap-size computer. This function is completely unique, so we need a completely unique shape.
By far the most compact machine at the show is the Epson wrist computer, a watch-sized computer on a chip with a communications port, 2K of RAM, and 4 built-in programs. It also tells time, by the way. Advanced peripherals were preeminent at Comdex, and leading the group was the CD-ROM disc, displayed both by Denon and Sony.
CD-ROM is the kind of new technologies using the CD audio technologies. This is a very high-capacity mass storage systems. This is read-only memory and a capacity of 540 megabytes. When you compare the floppy disk with this ones, capacity more than 500 times, and so the capacity is very huge. And also this is using the technology of the audio CD, so the media itself is eventually the cost will be inexpensive. Oh, there are many applications there. The one is a kind of a database access. There are so many online database in the United States, but the cost of the retrieving is very expensive because of using the telephone lines. And this is a very relatively inexpensive medias, and they said you distribute 1,000 pieces to the customers, and the cost is very cheap. And also some companies thinking kind of home education or school educations, because this media can contain the graphics, sound, text, voice, and so on.
For the user with serious data storage problems, Sony offered a large-sized Laserdisc with a capacity of 3.28 gigabytes, or about 30,000 pages. To satisfy the Japanese craving for foreign language instruction, a number of CAI applications were on view, including this computerized mystery story from the Limelight Company. The built-in cassette player is synchronized to the screen's graphics for a complete audiovisual language lesson.
New York seems strange to Tom. It doesn't seem real.
Japan's manufacturing ingenuity is on display around the world, and the first-time visitor to Japan sees it everywhere, from neatly packaged lunchboxes to high-tech toys. But most Japanese companies seem to admit that when it comes to computers, they lack the competitive edge, for now.
Stewart, it looks like there are a lot of manufacturers in different countries that like to bring computers onto the shore, but it really is a Japanese challenge that our manufacturers are concerned about.
We're going to talk about that next, Gary. We have Michael Miller with us now. Michael is the West Coast editor of Popular Computing magazine. And next to Michael is Christopher Meade, the editor and publisher of the Japan High-Tech Review based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Chris, in various publications we've seen computer systems have been very successful in Japan, such as the Sharp X1 or MSX, that have not come onto our shores, that haven't been introduced in the United States. What's the reason for that?
I think the basic reason is really just language. First of all, the Japanese language is so complicated with the characters or kanji, which need to be represented graphically. It requires more computer power to do that than just the Western alphabet. This has meant that until just a year or so ago, it was impossible to have the Japanese language on personal computers. This kept them far behind our industry in their development of personal computers.
Now, what about their local customer base? You know, there's quite a few million people in Japan. Is there let's say, some intention to sell into that market first and then come on into the United States? Do you feel that at all?
Well, I think that's been true with many Japanese companies as sort of a traditional viewpoint that you don't want to embarrass yourself outside before you first perfect your product at home. Mm-hmm. There's part of that. The other problem is, of course, I alluded to the Japanese language. We also have the English language problem. With software, it's a tremendous advantage to speak the language of the people you're selling to.
So there's also the conversion of just the manuals and documentation and the programs themselves into English. Michael, what about, let's take MSX as another example. Now, that is a machine that could compete, let's say, with the Commodore 64. Has Commodore and Atari, have those two companies kept MSX out?
Well, MSX is really a standard that will be adhered to if it exists by a number of Japanese companies. Many of these machines were shown in January at the Consumer Electronics Show, and many of them are being marketed in Japan. But as of yet, nobody's brought them over here successfully. It seems that the machines are not up to date as much as the newer machines that Commodore and Atari are about to come up with.
But what about manufacturing and packaging? Do the Japanese have any, let's say, real distinct advantage over the companies here in the United States, or are things being built in the Orient anyway?
Well, basically both the Atari machine, the Commodore machine, in fact machines by all manufacturers, consist in a large part of components that are manufactured in Japan or South Korea or other overseas destinations.
Christopher, you were suggesting that the problem of language and so on is kind of a past tense problem. Do you see the Japanese as having solved that now and therefore becoming a greater challenge in the future?
It depends on what you mean by the future. The next 6 months, I don't see much of a problem for American makers. I think it's more long term. For example, Hitachi Corporation has had an internal goal of becoming the #1 computer company in the world. But the first, they would like to be the #1 semiconductor manufacturer in the world. And the hope was to reach that goal in 1990, and then to pass IBM and be the world's top computer maker in the year 2000. So there's a lot of time.
Well, what about peripherals? The Japanese have been very successful on the peripheral side here in this country. Why?
Absolutely. The language problem is really not as important there. For manufacturing, you'll see more and more American companies turning to Japan, and you'll also see American designers deciding, for whatever reasons, I don't want to work with these American manufacturers. I want to go directly. It's eventually going to be produced in Japan anyway, so why don't I just go there right from the start?
Well, that's kind of scary prospect for the competition in the future then. Gentlemen, we're out of time. Thank you for adding that information. Now, will the Japanese, in fact, take over the computer market in this country, much as they have done in cameras and VCRs and automobiles and so on? Our commentator, Paul Schindler, has some thoughts.
Japanese journalists often come here to ask me about life in the electronic cottage, which proves my point that no matter what you may have heard, the Japanese still don't have all the answers. Now, a lot of people have been making a prediction for years that there's going to be an overwhelming Japanese invasion that'll sweep into the American personal computer market just like they did autos and steel. Well, I'm here to tell you that Silicon Valley isn't Detroit or Pittsburgh. And I'm not going to argue that the managers here are smarter than the captains of industry who let the Japanese steal their markets. But they are younger and nimbler, and they won't sit still for it. I also won't argue that the Japanese imitate instead of innovate. They do both, and they do both well. But we've got a secret weapon they may never overcome. This is a keyboard society, theirs is not. English is phonetic, most Japanese alphabets are ideographic. Every English word can be written with 26 letters, but it takes thousands of characters to write Japanese. I type 60 words a minute, but in Japan, 5 words is breakneck speed. Sure, they might beat us to voice recognition, but the US market for Japanese-speaking computers is going to be pretty small. Don't worry about Japan. I don't. That's my opinion. I'm Paul Schindler.
On our next edition of the Computer Chronicles, we'll visit Tsukuba, Japan, to take a look at Expo 85, Japan's high-tech World's Fair of the future. You'll see computers from around the world, and we'll show you robots that walk, talk, and even play the organ. Don't miss it next week on the Computer Chronicles. In the random access file this week, it's Send in the Clones time, the AT clones this time. First of all, Compaq has announced 2 new computers, a desktop and a portable, that are AT compatible. Compaq says its desktop runs up to 30% faster than the IBM AT. And NCR has announced a new AT clone called the PC-8. It can serve up to 16 users. Both the Compaq and NCR computers use the Intel 8286 microprocessor, the same one used in the IBM PC-AT. Also rumors that both Tandy and Hewlett-Packard are readying AT clones, the Tandy machine possibly being shown at this week's Comdex in Atlanta. Another major attack on IBM came this week with 2 announcements from AT&T and Xerox. First of all, AT&T said it will begin selling its new 32-bit microprocessor in the hopes of expanding the Unix world. The new AT&T chip, of course, runs Unix. And Xerox announced this week that some of its new computers will be AT&T compatible, and that Ethernet and AT&T Starlan will now work interchangeably. Meanwhile, Apple announced the end of the Lisa, more recently known as the Macintosh XL. Lisa, which never made it in the marketplace, had gone down in price from $10,000 to under $4,000. Apple says it will instead concentrate on making more Big Macs. All the talk about Japanese exports and imports may not mean much in the future in the computer field. Japan has been investing heavily in Silicon Valley. Here's a look at the leading Japanese companies now making high-tech products in California. Overall, Japanese corporations own or control 140 industrial plants in California. One writer says it may be time to rename Silicon Valley Sashimi Valley. No need to rename our writer, Paul Schindler. He's back again with this week's software review.
There's a problem with my copy of DBase 3, and the problem is the people who sold it to me don't think there's a problem. You see, I can load this popular program on my hard disk if I want, gaining speed and convenience. I can load it, but to use it, I have to load a floppy disk every time. That's because DBase 3, like a lot of other expensive software, is copy protected. You know, a hard disk full of copy protected software is nearly pointless. There is an answer. It's Copy to PC. This program enables you to make backup copies of copy protected software. Have a look at its screens. They're nearly too simple for words. This program was not made to look at, it was made to use. It lets you put copy-protected software on hard disks without requiring you to insert that floppy. Now look, I know Copy2PC and its ilk can be used illegally, but so can a butter knife. Does that mean we should ban butter knives? I don't think so. I haven't made a single illegal copy of any software with this program, and I never will. I don't think you will either. Copy2PC, $50 from Central Point Software in Portland, Oregon. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
One software trend is the growth of mini versions of best-selling business programs. Two examples, MicroPro is coming out with a mini WordStar to sell for $150, less than half the price of a full-blown WordStar. Other mini programs coming include subsets of Framework and a mini version of ThinkTank. There may be a slowdown in the sale of home computers, but computers in the schools are booming. The number of computers in schools increased by 75% last year. Nearly 300,000 computers were bought by schools in '84. More than 85% of public schools now report using computers. The average school has 8 computers. The airline People Express has come up with a solution to the problem of busy reservation operators. Replace them with computers. You can now make a reservation on People Express by punching in the appropriate data on your touch-tone telephone. A synthesized voice coaches you along the way. Finally, Apple may be known for its TV ads here in the States, but IBM carved a niche for itself in a French magazine this month, becoming the first advertiser ever to have a talking, blinking ad in print. The ad appeared in an April issue of France's news weekly Le Point. The ad featured an embedded microprocessor, battery, and speaker, which caused the Charlie Chaplin ad to light up and play music when the page was turned. The ad cost IBM $2 per issue. Nearly 300,000 copies of Le Point were bought on the first day. That's it for this week's Computer Chronicles. We'll see you again next time.
The Computer Chronicles was brought to you in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Popular Computing, the magazine that gives readers an understanding of the technology and applications of microcomputers and software in office, home, and classroom.
Hotel accommodations in Japan provided by the Capital Tokyu Hotel, a member of the Tokyu Hotel chain, with hotels throughout Japan and the Far East. Air transportation courtesy of Japan Airlines, providing service to 33 countries around the world.